My name is Aman. I'm the founder of the Brown But Better podcast and also a coach helping South Asian men become better versions of themselves. And that's what the podcast talks about as well. So we help men become better brothers, better husbands, fathers and sons, and generally just better men. And it looks at helping brown men explore their identity through kind of the Western culture, I guess I could say. And I've been asked by the Sikhing app to come over here, talk about parts of dating, marriage, relationship, and talk about those areas that often don't get discussed in public. You know, maybe they just stay in private group chats, private conversations. As a Sikh man, I can say that divorce is not the end of the world, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And despite it obviously being a difficult time and a challenging thing to go through, there are many opportunities that await you on the other side of that. So me and my ex-wife, we met at sixth form at school. And in that initial period, we were just friends. You know, we had some classes together. We spoke a little bit about Formula One. And then we both went off our separate ways. I went off to do some work. She went off to university. But we stayed in touch, mostly through social media, Twitter. And we kept in touch via Formula One. And then slowly things progressed and we actually started dating. And we dated for about 3 or 4 years before getting married, just before lockdown, before COVID. And we're relatively happy together, at least on the outside. Unfortunately, when things got a bit more difficult and when different areas of our life became challenging all at once, that's when, you know, some of the issues started arising. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that, you know, conflict isn't a bad part of a relationship. So me and her, we hardly had any arguments. But what we probably didn't realize was that neither of us wanted to rock the boat. And then before we realized it, the boat was already upside down. And one thing I've learned through this, and especially through reading books by the Gottman doctors as well, an example of that is Fight Right. They talk about different fighting styles even. And I realized that we were both avoidants. So whenever difficult conversations came up, we would both chat about them relatively lightly, talk about what we would do going forward, and then just move on. We almost wouldn't discuss it again, even if one of us still felt there was things to be discussed. I think it was March 2024 where I kind of realized that actually, you know, there was a lot of distance, there was a lot of apathy within the relationship. Both of us weren't getting things from it that we both needed. And I thought, actually, this isn't it. You know, this isn't what I wanted married life to be. And whilst externally, we both seemed to be quite happy, you know, none of our friends and family would have thought we were going through these issues. Internally, I felt like we were heading towards what was quite a mediocre life, I would say. And if anyone knows me, they know that, you know, one thing that I do not do is mediocre. And so at that point in March 2024, I kind of realized, you know, I was 95% sure that the marriage was going to end probably within the next year, and that I would be the one kind of stepping away from that marriage. And it's a hard decision to take, especially considering, you know, how much fun we had on the wedding day, all the like interesting things that we've done in our relationship. The fact that we'd been abroad, we'd seen Formula One races in, you know, several parts of the world, from Canada to kind of Europe as well, quite a few different races. And all the good times as well that we'd spent together in terms of like family functions, you know, her brother's wedding, other kind of family weddings as well that we'd been to. And our parents were relatively close, both geographically and kind of otherwise. And we'd used to kind of visit each other's parents on a regular basis.
Is it just that you grew apart? So you knew this person for a number of years as friends, then you started dating, then you got married, and then that's when the reality kind of hit in terms of, right now I'm living with this person and kind of doing life with this person, and you were just on different trajectories?
Yeah, I'd say that we probably were on different trajectories, to be honest. And there were things that I wanted from the relationship, you know, to have kids, to move into our own house as well, because we were living with my parents. And there were things that she wanted from the relationship. And I think primarily we weren't able to discuss those. I think they were, like I said before, kind of unmet needs. And I think actually we both avoided the hard topics and just kind of carried on as if things were normal, even though we both knew that things weren't normal. So, you know, one of the things that I would say to other couples as well, that, you know, if you do feel a certain way about an issue, you know, definitely bring it up. And don't necessarily come at it as an attack or to try and like make the other person or force the other person to understand your point of view. But it's more around kind of remembering that you're both a team and that if one of you has an issue, then theoretically both of you have an issue. So we were married for roughly 4 years, I would say, before things started breaking down. And that was when I think our priorities changed track. And we weren't having those difficult conversations with each other to really bring about those issues and discuss which way the relationship was heading. Because we didn't bring about those issues, it got to a point where essentially there was no point of return. You know, if you're thinking about lines and dots and stuff, you know, we'd cross the line of no return, almost living separate lives, essentially seeing each other as roommates. It was quite hard, to be honest, to go through that difficult period. I tried to do my best to bring things back, you know, started doing date nights, started bringing back a bit of fun into the relationship. But, you know, sometimes those underlying issues just won't go away without proper conversations.
Did you think about marriage counselling?
Yes. So we did have 6 months worth of marriage counselling. We spoke to someone, which really helped, to be honest. And it's something I would recommend to a lot of other people as well. You know, whether you're going through hard times or not, you know, we should look at these people as specialists, almost like if you want a fitness coach to help you become fitter, or you want a career coach to help you attain a certain career. I think relationship coaches and relationship counselors are very similar. You know, they're skilled in these conversations. And I do think that there is a massive stigma against going to counseling, whether that's, you know, marriage counseling, relationship counseling, or kind of any other counseling as well, even if it is just for yourself. And I think it's something that we probably need to tackle, to be honest, and have more conversations around, because we need to look at these people as those specialists who can help us. You know, I'm not sure why there is a stigma either, especially when most of the Western world, I guess we could say, have moved on and have normalized it. If we have any health issues, you know, we're quite happy to go to the doctor. But if we have any mental health issues, we don't really want to go to a therapist. If we have any relationship issues, we don't feel like we want to go to a relationship coach or counselor. And I've heard people say as well that, you know, why should we need to go to one? You know, even if they're in difficult situations. But realistically, who's taught us how to be a good person in a relationship? You know, where have we learned about what a good relationship looks like? We haven't. You know, you can go online and learn about how to do a triathlon, how to do a 10K, how to hit the gym. But there's very limited information that shows you how to show up, you know, in a good way as part of a relationship. We told our family first, and their reaction to the divorce was obviously quite sad, to be honest. I think they understood that we'd taken or not taken the decision lightly, and that we had discussed it and gone through different options, which we had also explained to them. We told them about going to relationship counseling as well, and that whilst it had helped, it wouldn't actually save the marriage. And there were a lot of kind of questions thrown about that I think were probably a little bit unfair. Some family members of mine, like extended family, you know, were almost asking me if there was someone on the side for me, asking, you know, what had I done. And that's probably a bit of a separate conversation there as well, about how men and women are looked at through divorce. Because, you know, sometimes even I was thinking about this on the way over. You know, when I think about a woman being divorced, I think, okay, it's probably the guy's done something, and hopefully she's able to, you know, heal from whatever harm has been caused. And if I think about a guy being divorced, I think, well, actually, yeah, what has he done that's, you know, caused the divorce, as opposed to thinking that, you know, maybe it is the lady that's the issue. Maybe there was abuse from the lady's side, or maybe it's something that he couldn't escape from apart from through divorce. So I actually started dating before the divorce had finalized, and it wasn't anything spiteful that I was doing to get back at her for any of the issues kind of on either side, but it was more to open myself to the opportunities that could potentially be out there, and almost to rekindle that part of myself that I had lost through the relationship. You know, I haven't dated for over 10 years, you know, as part of me being with my ex-wife. And so opening myself back up to dating was almost like stepping into a new area and almost a new chapter, and saying, well, actually, let's see what's out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that I have to get into a relationship, but I can actually just have some conversations with people, tell them where I'm at. Me and my ex-wife, we did end amicably, and whether she started dating or not, kind of before the divorce or after the divorce finalized, again, it's totally up to her. You know, it's her life to live. And I do also think that people take different amounts of time to process things. As part of my journey through the divorce, I also moved to a whole different city. So I moved up to the north. I was also kind of training for an Ironman as well, and also still going through therapy to help me process everything. And so I felt quite comfortable dating whilst in the middle of the divorce and telling people as well that, look, this is the situation. And again, it's totally up to those people as well to define or to decide whether they actually wanted to go on a date or whether they didn't. And whether my ex-wife is dating or not, again, totally up to her decision. She has, she obviously has the autonomy to do whatever she feels is comfortable for her. And, if she does start dating, I genuinely wish her all the best. I do wish she's able to find happiness and find someone who can give her the life that, she wants. So the way that people react when I tell them, oftentimes it's with sadness. They say, I'm sorry to hear. Sometimes it's with distance. So I know that there are some friends and family who I've told who then decided kind of not to respond to the messages. And that's been quite harsh, to be honest, quite unexpected as well, I would say. And it's a shame, really, that, I would say I've lost friends who I've known, since sixth form as well, family members who I don't really want to connect with anymore because of how they've reacted since the divorce. And for all the guys out there as well, I'd say if you know someone, if you have a friend out there who is going through a divorce and you're aware of it, just reach out to them. Just say, hey, mate, I heard about this terrible thing that you're going through. Just let me know how you're doing and try and schedule a call with them. It will mean a world, or it will make a world of difference to them.
Did you have any mutual friends, which then you lost? I guess if you knew each other from a long time or whatever, then did you have similar circles, and how did that impact things?
So because we both went to the same sixth form, we did have some mutual friends. There were some guy friends from that sixth form that I used to go out with on a regular-ish basis. We go for brunch, we go for games or something. And through the divorce, their partners were also quite close with my ex-wife. And as I understood it, they heard about the divorce through their partners, because obviously my ex-wife told their partners, and none of them reached out to me. None of them kind of just wanted to check in. None of them kind of even said anything about it, to be honest. And it was only when I questioned them about it that they said, yeah, we heard about this, we didn't know what to do. And so after that, I thought, well, realistically, like, if these are kind of friends that they are, then it's probably best that, we just part ways. And it is quite sad to say, to be honest. I do still, think of them fondly, but realistically, as you get a bit older, you kind of realize that, there are different friendship pockets as well. Some people are quite surface level, some people are quite deep. And I guess the relationships that you have as you grow older as well will also change. And what you want from relationships as you grow older will also change. And so in this phase of my life, those kind of surface level relationships are not the ones that I want. When I was on the dating apps and going for dates, I would try and tell people as early as possible. I think early on in the journey, I was still a little bit unsure of how people would react. And I think that probably did cause some issues. I remember there was one person I went on a date with and then told kind of a couple of days after the date that I was actually divorced or going through a divorce. And she didn't like that because she essentially said, oh, you're still married. And that's how she viewed it, as opposed to trying to understand, what actually caused the divorce or what actually caused the separation even. But on all of my profiles, I'm quite open with it and say that I am divorced now and tell people early on as well. And most people are actually okay with it. Some people want to find out what happened exactly. And I guess that's to understand what I've learned from the divorce and whether I would make the same mistakes again. I guess they probably also want to find out if there was anything abusive or if there's any like infidelity or something like that involved, which, as a woman is going to be a natural concern anyway, because, safety and trustworthiness are some key things that they're looking out for, as are men. And I guess for those people who aren't interested, they probably just don't swipe right. So I was on the dating apps a while ago, and I think one of the funniest or cheesiest things that I said to someone, they'd spelt their name in a way that was a bit unique. So, they had two A's there as opposed to just one A. And I kind of said to them, does the additional A stand for amazing or something really weird and tacky and cheesy like that? And it actually worked. We went on a date we went dating for like a couple of months after that. Fortunately, things ended relatively early, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And all you could do is just, be your authentic self and have that humor. So should the couple have the final say on the guest list, even if the parents are paying? I think personally, the couple can't really have the final say on the guest list. It's almost like the parents inviting loads of people out to a function that they want to do, and then you as the son or the daughter saying, no, you can't invite your friends and family or the people that you want to invite. I feel like it's a bit disingenuous, If you as a couple are paying for the wedding, totally agree you should be able to invite or disinvite or uninvite all the people that you don't want to. And I think speaking from experience, in our wedding, luckily, all the friends and family that we invited were quite close to. There were a handful of people there that I would rather have not had attended, to be honest. Those kind of surface level family members who only show up in the good times and never kind of any other times. And I think, especially with this day and age, the cost of everything going up as well, I do think we need to be a little bit more mindful about who we are inviting and what kind of energies we're bringing into the wedding. I also think as well that the people who get annoyed for not being invited to the wedding are probably also the people that you don't necessarily want there. Those are probably the people who are going to complain about the food, complain about this, complain about that. But realistically, the people, the friends and the family who care about you a lot, if they don't get invited and you have like a legitimate reason for it, and it could be the costs, it could be whatever other restrictions. So people will spend thousands and thousands of pounds on their wedding day, but then they won't invest anything into their marriage. And I think that wedding spending, the aesthetics and the pressure are probably getting a little bit out of hand. There's so many couples out there who, will spend thousands and thousands just to have the photos, just to have people say how amazing it is. But realistically, those people and the people that you're trying to impress won't be there potentially during your hard times. They won't be there in those moments where you need them as a couple to help you. And, you spend months talking about the outfits, the menus, the entrances, but realistically, we need to be having more of those conversations that are more difficult. The money matters. Who's going to help out with the chores? How are we splitting living arrangements? What kind of lifestyle are we going to have? And I think probably also those deeper conversations around, future goals as well. Where do you see the relationship in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? And making sure that you're both actually on the same train, heading in the same direction, as opposed to both being ships heading in potentially similar directions, but actually getting lost in the mist. So the next thing I want to talk about as well is wedding aesthetics and the sing for a day look. Now, there's a lot of people out there who will get married, have those Sikh weddings, and essentially hire someone to tie their turban for them because they don't know how to do that themselves. And it's a real big question there about, is it just something like an accessory that they're using? Because then when it comes to the evening and the reception, they're taking it off, they've got their skin fade, they're doing whatever else. And so personally, I think it's somewhat disrespectful, I think, for people to come into the Gurdwara, not even know how to tie their own turban, and just have it on as something that they have to do. And whilst I appreciate that they're showing respect for the Anand Karaj by wearing the dastar, but then is it really respectful if as soon as the Anand Karaj is done, as soon as they've left the Gurdwara, they're heading straight to the barbers, getting the skin fade done, and then going off in the afternoon or in the evening for the reception? What we're also seeing now is not only the groom, but the groom's father, the groom's friends, the groom's uncles, for example, also wearing the dastar. Now, is that something that they're doing out of respect, or is it something that they're just doing for the photos on the wedding day? Realistically, you could say that actually if they wanted to be respectful, they would have the dastar on for the whole day, showing the significance of their wedding day and of the Anand Karaj. I think it would be amazing if we had more monne out there, people with kind of cut hair, not long hair, learning how to tie the dastar for the wedding day, almost so that they have that skill that they could pass on to their kids potentially as well, if their kids then wanted to tie their own dastar. And I think the issue with having someone come in to tie your dastar for you is that it almost makes it a bit of an accessory. almost like how the woman will have someone come in to do their hair and makeup. It's kind of similar for yourself. You're having someone come in so you can look the part, but actually you don't know the significance of it. You don't know the fact that there were Sikh men in the past who were literally killed for wearing the dastard just because they were Sikh. And I think by being a munna, you're almost hidden away from that prejudice that the rest of us face. It's great that people are trying to embrace the religion more and wear the dastard, but is it turning it into a bit of a show and a joke? And maybe it is genuine respect. Maybe it's just something that they're doing out of performance. Or maybe it's both for some people. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about was when you live with your in-laws once you get married. And I think there's a lot of people that I know who have been almost sold a bit of a dream. So the lady has been told that, once they get married, they'll move in with the in-laws, but it's only going to be a temporary thing, maybe 6 months, a year or something. But then what happens is as soon as they're married, or maybe a couple of months into the marriage, they get told, it's probably going to happen, we'll try and make it happen. And I think that's quite unfair on these ladies out there who have actually been trapped into these marriages thinking that they're going to have their own space. And it's so important within Punjabi and Sikh culture, I think, to have your own space, because a lot of the families there are quite enmeshed. We have those boundaries that almost get eroded because we're so close of a community. And, for the brothers out there who are thinking this or who have done this, I would say to them, maybe just have some self-reflection out there. Think about your partner's wishes and, why she also got into this relationship, thinking, one of the reasons being that she would have her own place as well and her own space. And for the sisters out there who are in this situation, genuinely, I wish you can communicate with your partner in a way that helps you to find a way forward and helps you come to a solution where you do get your own space and that you essentially almost live happily ever after. One of the challenges as well is that when you're living with your parents as the guy, you're always going to be looked at as the son or as the child within that house. So it's only when you've got your own place that your parents will then potentially see you as a bit of an equal, as an adult. There'll be a change in the relationship dynamic there because you're not going to be with them all the time. And if you've got the money to do so, definitely go out and try and buy your own place, because then it allows you and your partner to forge your own destiny going forward. You don't have that those constraints and those barriers put in place by your family about, you have to attend this thing, you have to do this. And you also don't put the strain on the parents as well to look after you. There's families out there who've broken down because the chores have just gotten too much for one person. And typically it's the mother or the daughter-in-law who's doing all the chores. And realistically, as men in this 21st century, we kind of need to step up in that area as well. Start being proactive in terms of looking after the house, looking after the chores, doing some of those domestic duties, because realistically, if we look at it, the women have stepped up in terms of going from being like the domestic queens to like CEOs and all sorts out there in the work world. But guys, we've gone from being like really good at work to not really doing much at home. We haven't stepped up in a way that the women have stepped up. And so I think one of the big challenges for men out there, especially through my podcast that I put out, is I challenge them to step up more around the house and around the family, essentially. Yeah. And it's such a shame as well that I think that there's a lot of women out there who end up becoming that mother, as you said, for the guys. And the guys generally just don't know how to look after themselves. I know people who are kind of early 20s, mid 20s, potentially even later than that, who haven't ever used a washing machine. The only meals that they know how to cook for themselves are the ones that they throw into the oven. They don't know how to shop for themselves and to buy things that are healthy, organic. And that's why when you look at the statistics, it shows that men who are unmarried when they get older, I think typically live something like 4 years less than their married kind of counterparts. And if you look at women who are unmarried when they get older, they actually live longer than if they were married.
That's interesting. I would have thought it would have been the other way. I would have thought guys, they would have lived longer on their own rather than when they're married.
No, so I think what it is that like the women essentially are doing a lot of work for the guys. And also, if we look at kind of the statistics around loneliness, men typically have less social connections than women. And so when they get older, potentially they're not fostering those social connections. And I think what happens in a lot of relationships as well is that the guy ends up potentially withdrawing from their own friendships and from their own social life, and their partner becomes that only person that they can really talk to. You can feel like almost like your partner is your everything. And so then, if you go through a divorce or something, a lot of people who I've spoken to and who I've coached through my work have then lost their own identity. They've almost put so much into the relationship and into their partner that they've lost that part of themselves, and they lost their own self-identity. And sometimes those are the people who end up struggling the most because the relationship's ended. So
do you think it's because guys are not proactive enough in maintaining their friendships post-marriage, whereas women are more able to do that? So they still have their social network, where if there's a lot of guys, they kind of just can't be asked, and then their partner becomes their full social life.
I think part of it might be because they can't be asked to keep up their friendships. I think also part of it might be around they're not getting what they want from the relationships as well. And maybe because of that, they don't want to put that effort into it. And like, we all have our own kind of priorities in life, things that we focus on more. And if your friendship is a priority because of how much you value it, then you're going to naturally put in effort and time towards it. And so maybe it's a question there about how are guys actually maintaining their friendships. Now we see a lot of younger people just playing COD and stuff online with their friends. And, is that actual connection when you're just talking to people and talking to your friends online whilst playing a video game? Or do we actually need those in-person connections to keep things alive, healthy, and ticking in a way that actually provides positive well-being to the individuals? Yeah. We've got some reader questions and dilemmas coming through. The first one I'm going to go through. So I spent £400 on date 3 and got dumped the next morning. Oof, that is pretty harsh. That's quite savage there, to be fair. So I matched with this girl, thought she was the one. First 2 dates were unreal. Banter flowing, she's laughing at my jokes. She mentioned that she likes the Lion King musical. So for date 3, I think I'm going big. Tickets to the show, £200 each, £400 total. Ouch. Night's perfect. I'm sat there thinking this is it. This is the one. The next morning, the text comes through. Had a really lovely evening, but I just don't see this going anywhere romantically. Ooh. Oh, to hear that after you spent that much money. Ouch. But she did pay me back her half of the tickets, putting a little lion emoji in the payment reference. So fair play to her, actually. That's quite a kind thing to do, quite emotionally mature. And I would say to this brother, man, slow down. You can't be doing these kind of things on date 3. Wait until she's your girlfriend at least. Unless, obviously, you're a big baller and you're happy to spend this kind of money. And fair play to the lady as well. Like I said, quite an emotionally mature thing to do, to give the money back. But yeah, date 3, booking that and getting dumped the next morning. I feel for you. You went big. You went hard. You knew what you wanted. You thought she was the one. You thought she was going to be future wifey, future Mrs. Core, and then it didn't work out. So yeah, sorry to hear that. And yeah, next time, slow down. Wait until she's actually exclusively your girlfriend and then go big. On to the next one. I matched with 3 different girls on the apps, and it turns out 2 of them are sisters and the 3rd is their cousin. Whoa, that is crazy. So I finally put myself out there, joined the apps, and for once it's going well. Good convos. So I move one chat over to Instagram. I'm scrolling her profile and I spot another one of my matches in her photos. Dun, dun, dun. Small world, I think. Then I see a 3rd one. 2 sisters, their cousin, their family WhatsApp must be on fire, and I haven't even met any of them yet. Oh, that's a tricky one, to be honest. So what do? Come clean to all 3, pick the one that I vibe with, and risk it being the wrong one. Oof. In terms of dilemmas, that is a big dilemma, to be fair. And personally, I would say pick the one that you vibe with and risk it, and let her know as well, because if she doesn't already know, then she will find out. And if things are going well with that one person that you vibe with and you don't tell her and she finds out afterwards, I'm sorry, brother, that's going to be the end of your relationship right there. Right, on to the next one. The guy I'm speaking to used to date my sister. None of us knew until we were all at the same wedding. Whew. I've been speaking to this guy for weeks. Great vibes, smart, quick to reply. Good, I like the consistency there. And we'd been planning to meet up. Then I'm at a wedding, mid-meal, my phone buzzes. It's him. He's here. I'm thinking, this is mad. It's almost like fate. Okay. He checks again. Who's the girl sitting next to you? It's always a bit dodgy. The girl is my sister. Turns out they had been on a few dates a couple of years ago and she had ghosted him. Oof. When we talk about emotional maturity, ghosting is probably the worst thing that I think you can do in terms of trying to be emotionally mature. And when it comes to dating as well, you know, you never really know when to open up to other people about who you're dating and when you're dating. Yeah, you've been speaking for weeks, you got great vibes, and maybe find out why the ghosting happened, I guess, from your sister. That's what I would say. And it was a couple of years ago as well, a couple of dates, so probably not that big of a deal. You know, we've all gone on dates with a couple of people and then just kind of things fizzled out. So you're probably okay, I think, to carry on, but definitely find out why the ghosting happened. Definitely find out if there were any red flags over there or even potentially some orange flags, and try and make sure that, you know, they don't necessarily happen to you. Okay, so on to the next one. A family friend set me up with a guy at a wedding, but I want to marry his younger brother. Ooh, younger brother. Okay, interesting. On paper, the guy's perfect. Good job, lovely family, polite, respectful. We like that. We chat for 10 minutes. He's genuinely lovely, but his younger brothers stood right there, and the conversation with him is just easier. What? He's got more of my humor. I catch myself more into him than the guy I'm actually being introduced to. Okay. Now the family's messaged asking if I want to take it forward with the older brother, but I actually want the other one. Oh, that's a tricky situation to be in, because you've got the family pressure, you've got the brother there expecting things to be going well between you two, especially with the fact that, you know, like you said there, it's a good job, lovely family, the person's being polite and respectful as well. But I think if you want to stay true to yourself, you probably have to ask if the younger brother is available. And I know you might disrespect the family and potentially even disrespect your own family as well, I guess. But you don't want to be married to someone who just isn't your type. Yeah, you don't want to be married to someone who isn't your type. Although, if you're open to it, potentially go on a date with the older brother. Maybe he's just nervous. It's a big day. You know, he's expecting to meet someone that he might actually get married to. And so nerves can make people play up in a way that you just wouldn't expect. The younger brother's there just for good vibes anyway. So, you know, he's not going to be feeling that pressure. He's not going to be feeling any kind of stress like the older brother is. So I personally actually would change my mind there. I'll say go for a couple of dates with the older brother. If it's not working, go for the younger brother and just let him know that that's the deal.